and the code I shared, because I shared it in the
Yeah,
Slack
I saw.
channel.
I know. I wasn't. I'm not done with it though, but I'm still going through it.
All right. Okay. So in our last class, we looked at inbuilt functions. We looked at, just a minute. Let me just get my slide. Yeah. Can you see my slides? I want to confirm you can see them.
Yes, I can.
Okay. So in our last class, we looked at array methods. I think that was where we started from. Yes. We looked at different array methods. We looked at inbuilt functions and methods for arrays. We looked at inbuilt functions for strings as well. So we looked at several examples. The more common one, uh, like I said in last class, it's not possible for us to cover everything, but we just looked at the major ones and we tried to see how they work. And if you go through the code, I gave examples, I made comments when necessary, so that when you're reading through the code, you know what the next line of code is trying to achieve. Also, in the last class, we started with DOM manipulation. So I'll just do a quick refresher and then we'll pick it up from there. So what's the DOM? Basically, um, it's an acronym for the document object model. So when you load your web page, in the background, what happens is that the the browser creates a document object model, such something like a map that maps out what each object is like. So I gave an example in the last class that if you have an HTML page that has just the head, the HTML, the body, there is going to be an exact replica, like the same thing, on the background. So this image here was an example of what a DOM would look like. This is the document, which is also known as the root element, because if you see, before it we have nothing else, just that document. So that's the root element. The root element is the HTML, and then we have some elements. This is the head element, for instance, and then title. And just like we have in family trees, where you have, say, the grandfather, for instance, and then we have children. Now the relationship between children are called what? Siblings, right? So it's typically the same thing. So for instance, the head and body can be referred to as what? Siblings, because they're on the same level, right? And then we have parents and grandparents. Can you still hear me, Femi?
Yes, I can.
All right. So this is just an example of the HTML DOM. So why is it important for us to learn about the HTML DOM or how to manipulate it? It basically gives us access to change things on the web page. So instead of having just static content, since we have access to it, we can change, we can edit, we can modify, we can add new stuff to it. So that's basically why we need to know about DOM manipulation. When the web page is loaded, the browser creates a document of the model of the page. Yes, it is basically used for manipulating HTML documents. I change it the way I want. It can access it, change the elements. It can change the HTML attributes, change the CSS. It can change the styling of a page. We can basically do a lot with that manipulation. So we looked at some of, okay, I think we stopped here in our last class, so I'll just continue from this slide. Now, DOM methods are methods you can perform on HTML elements. We gave examples in the last class. Very popular ones, you have your get elements by ID. Already in our HTML class, we talked about giving um, element ID. So if I have an element on a page, I can give it an ID of whatever I want to give it, and then using that ID, I can change the content, right? So, and by now I'm sure we know that ID should be unique. It means I can only have an ID on just one page. I can't have two IDs of the same name. I cannot have two IDs of the same name on that same page. So for instance, this was the example I gave in the last class. If I have a paragraph of this ID, can you see my ID,
Yes, I
Visual
can
Studio
see.
Code?
I can see.
Okay. I have this paragraph of this ID, of an ID of demo. Sorry, trying to change this. I don't know which one. All right. If I go to this, see, documents by, I'm getting it by ID. This is a method. If I go by this slide, so this get document by ID is a method, right? And now when I've gotten the method, what do I want to change about that particular? Let me just delete the whole of this, and then we'll start on a fresh. Yes. So now I've gotten this document by its ID, which is demo, right? Please note that it has to be the same ID I gave the element. Whatever ID I gave the element has to be reflected here. When I get the document by its ID, what do I want to change about it? Is it the style or whatever do I want to change? So in this case, I want to change the inner HTML. The inner HTML is just simply the text that is inside, right? So I want it to write this on the screen. So if I go here, I think I'll just minimize. Just going to minimize my code editor and also my browser so that we can have the same, can have it all at once. Okay. I think we're just here. So yes, it's now appearing on the page. If I change this to um, refresh, if I change this to testing, I don't know if that server. Okay, the server is no longer on. Let me just start my server. That's nice. Just go to start my server.
The server has not gone live.
Yeah. Okay, I disposed. Okay, and then we have this. So yes, so that's one way of um, getting an element. Let's see. HTML DOM method are the actions you can perform on HTML elements. I can get the element by its ID. I can get it by its class name. I can get it by its tag name. Remember, tag names are just the listing itself are p tag, the h1 tag, h2 tag, right? So the properties are values that we can set or change. So in this instance now, the method is it get element by ID, right? And the property is what? Dot. The property is the inner HTML, right? So there are four major ways of selecting items in the DOM. Get element by ID. Well, look at that. Get element by class name. In the last class, I also said this. The difference is that, you know, um, different elements can have one particular class, right? So for
Yeah.
instance, if I have a whole lot of elements with this same class, this class one, and I want to get all of these elements that have this class one. It's very simple. I just make use of the get elements by class name, documents dot get elements by class name. You'll notice is get elements. There's an S because it's not just one, unlike the ID. So if I do get elements by class name, and what's the class name I'm trying to get? Class one.
That's one.
Yes. The class that I'm trying to get. Let me log this out first before I even change anything about it, so we can easily see the difference. So if I log this now, I have to call this something so that I'll be able to log that variable out. Test equals to this. So if I log my test variable, also, can you see it's an HTML collection, and it's 4 because I have 4 of those classes. If I increase it, it's going to become 5 as well. So per chance I want to change just one of this paragraph. I have 4. If I just go ahead and do dot inner HTML, for instance, equals to test 2, it's going to throw an error. Why? Because the HTML collection is like an array, and if you remember how we access elements in an array, how do you access elements in an array? We have to, yes, the index. So I have to target the one I want to. So is it the first one? If it is the first one, then that will okay.
0.
Yes. If I do this now, the error has gone, and then it will log, and it's showing on my piston. So it's a very common mistake. When you see elements, it shows that it's more than one. It's not just one. But get elements by ID. It's just going to get the first one. So that's another way by which we can get our elements. So this method returns a collection of all elements in the document with the specified class name. So all elements that have that particular class name you are trying to get is going to pop up. The same thing is get elements by tag name. By tag name. So for instance, I want to get all the elements I have in my document. I don't need to do test 2. I hope you understand, please.
Yes, I do.
Unexpected. There's an error. Where's the error coming from? Line 17. Okay, I'm not closing something properly here. Okay, I'm not closing this properly. Okay, that works. So if I lock test 2 now, can you see? So all the P, so you can see, it's even giving us the one that has an ID, the one that has a class. So I have 6 P tags here. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it's not just giving me, it's telling me the one that its ID and the class name as well. So that's another way by which you can get what's it called? You can get elements. We also have our query selectors. Actually, we have query selector, and then we have query selector all. So query selector, it helps us get the elements by that particular. This returns the first value that matches the selector it's given. This one accepts style selectors. So anything that has to do with CSS style selectors, if you want to get elements by using CSS style selectors, we are going to use our query selector. So I'm just going to say, and note, it's going to return the first one. So that means if you have more than one, it will return both. It's going to return just the first one. So if I do cons query equals to document dot get document dot query selector, and I say I want the one of demo. Log this. Can you still hear me, please?
Yes, yes.
So it's returning the first one, the very first one. We also have query selector all. query selector all, but in this case, let me use it with something that has as class one. I think that's class one. I think it was class one I gave it. Yes. So can we see? So
No.
the query would return the first instance, while the query selector all return all instances. Do you understand? So get element
Yes.
by ID, get elements by class name, get elements by tag name, query selector all, query selector, and the query selector and query selector all, they work with CSS. So I can't do get document by document dot query selector all, and then I'm calling a tag name, right? So that's that. So now we know how to get elements from the document. But it's not just enough for us to get the elements. We should be able to, I mean, the topic is literally DOM manipulation. And what does manipulation mean? It means changing or tweaking something to suit your own need, right? So it's not just to be able to get it. I should be able to change it. I should be able to add elements. I should be able to remove elements. Now, there are a whole lot of DOM manipulation methods, and we can't exhaust them all. But as we've been doing in time past, I tried as much as possible to look at the important ones, talk about them, and then we can always read about more in our spare time. So with the HTML DOM, you can navigate the node tree. Now this is the node tree. This picture that we have here, this is the node tree, just for a reference purpose. Where was I? Okay, I think I was in slide 10. So we can navigate the node tree and access nodes in the tree using the relationships. Remember I talked about siblings, we talked about parents, we talked about grandparents, right? Just like in a family tree, in a typical family tree, I'd have husband and wife, and then I have siblings, and then we have cousins, we have nieces, nephews, right? Now, new nodes can be created, they can be modified or deleted. Now, every parent has every node, sorry about that. Every node has exactly one parent except the top node, which is the parent, which has no parents. So if I see this title has just this parent, right? The parent of this head is what? What's the parent of this head node?
The root element, the HTML.
Yes. So this is the only one that doesn't have a parent. This root element, right? It's just this one that doesn't have a parent. So exactly one parent. And then we have them siblings. We have siblings. So siblings, that's brothers and sisters, are not with the same parent. They are just simply not in the same parent. So let's take this example. If I have a parent element that has 5 children elements, let me just copy this so as to not waste time. I'm just going to replace all of this. So this is the parent of what we are considering. Then this is the first child, this is the second child, this is the third child, the fourth child, and this is the fifth child, right? So now what we want to do is try to add another div tag to this. If I go to my browser now, I should see, can you see? I should see this. All of these things are failing. Let me just comment it out. What I want to try to do is introduce another div to this guy. So we are going to take it step by step. So the first thing we have to do is to create the elements. We have to create the elements. Let me see. So how do we create the elements? JavaScript provides a method called create element, and now I can create different elements. If it depends on what I want to create, but in this case I'm creating a div. I can create a div, I can create a paragraph tag, I can create a span, I can create anything. So far as it's an HTML element, I can create that element. So I'm just going to this thing can, you know. So note that we can create anything, but it's just that this is what we want to create. In this case, we want to create a div, and that's why I'm writing a div. So document.createElements, this is a JavaScript method that has been provided for us to create elements. Document.createElements, what element are we trying to create? We're trying to create a div, right? Now we have created a div. In fact, let's just log this so that we'll see what's happening on every step of the way and it doesn't look like a magic. If I log this, you can see that a div was created, right? But are we seeing it on our documents? Hello? Are we still here? Can anybody hear me, please?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can
No.
hear you.
Okay, I wanted to confirm that. So you can see the div was created, but it's not showing on the document because it's still empty. We've not added anything. So let's see the next steps we are supposed to follow. Now we use the inner HTML to add a text to it. We want to add a text to it, so we are going to use the inner HTML property to add text to it. So I'm just going to share. Now I'm naming this guy's variable so that because I just want to log it. So this is the variable we created. The create. Let me just name it properly. In fact, let me call this one create element. No, I can't call it create elements because that's a keyword in JavaScript. So now my create element dot, that means I want to give this create element an inner HTML, which is this. So now if I log my inner HTML, I'm going to see a div with a text of this. Can you see? Right? So now the first thing we did was to create the elements. In our case, we created a div and then we gave it an inner HTML, which is, it can be anything depending on what you want to give it. Actually, it can be anything. And then now what we have achieved so far is creating an element and then inserting a text node, but it is not yet part of the DOM tree. It is not attached to the DOM tree yet, and I mean that's the importance. Until it is attached to the DOM tree, we will not see it on the page. So how do we attach it to the DOM tree? So we need to get the parent first. We need to get where we want to attach it to. Are we clear on that? So remember I said when I started with this example, I said I wanted to add another div to this, right? I wanted to add another child element to this. So I need to get this parent first because this is where I want to attach it to. And how do I select the parent? I can use my get elements by ID. I hope we are still following. So when I get my elements by ID, which is where I want to attach it to, right? Now I'm going to use a JavaScript method that is asking me to append the child. I'm going to append it to the parents because that's where I want it to stay. I'm going to append it to the parent, and I'm going to just say parents element dot this. So if I save this, it shows up on my. Let me remove this. Can you see? Let me reduce this. Do you understand? Hello. Please, I need responses so I'll know I am not just speaking to myself. Hello, are we still here, please?
Yes.
I was asking a question, nobody was responding.
I didn't hear anything.
I was asking if how we created the elements was, if you guys understood the process.
Yes.
Okay, so please, can you walk me through it? Let me expand this. Can you walk me through the process, please?
Okay. So the first one creates like a sort of the element itself. That's the tag. It's a
Okay.
div tag.
Okay.
Sorry, it creates the div tag. Then
Okay.
the second one sort of like creates the say you want to write a text in the div tag or something like that. Yeah, it does that. It creates that. And then the third one creates a sort of um that's the parent element. Yeah, what does that word keep skipping? The parent element which has no parent. That's the um element, that's like the whole file where the whole elements are contained in.
That's why I want to
um,
attach the newly created
yeah,
element to basically.
yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So I just needed to know that we understood the whole process. All right. Thank you for that. So that's that about creating a new element. So you can see for something that was not on the page, I mean, there's no HTML for it, but using DOM manipulation, we're able to create, and not just create, we're able to, append it to something in the DOM. It needs to be attached to something, it needs to be part of a tree. Otherwise, it won't show up in our browser. Okay, so that's that. Let's look at other things we can do. Let me see. All right, so in the example that we just finished now, our child div tag was added at the bottom automatically, but in some cases we might not want to add it. We might want to add it before. This is what I'm talking about. Automatically was added here. But what if I don't want to add it to the last part? What if I want it to be the second or the third or the fourth? Whatever. So we can also achieve that with JavaScript. It's very possible. And how do we achieve that? We use the insert before JavaScript method. Let me just highlight this so that when I'm sharing, it will be visible. We are going to be using the insert before JavaScript method, which accepts two parameters. Is the parameters they accept is the new node, that's what we just created, and then the existing node, right? So let me highlight this as well. just for the sake of emphasis. So let me just copy all of this, and please note the reason I'm copying this is just to save time, really, because if I have to type all of this out, it takes a chunk of our time. All right, so let's go through document by ID parents, get element, the first charge. Okay, let me just comment this out and then I write something on top. So creating a new element. All right, so let's walk through lines 24 to 28 very quickly. The first line is getting the parent node and is getting it using the get element by ID, and the second line, that's line 25, is also getting the child element, that's the first child. If you look at our HTML, you can see this div has an ID of first child, so it's getting that as well. And then we are creating a new element in line 26, and then in line 27 we are attaching an inner HTML, just like what we've done in the example before. But now we are not just leaving it, we are not just appending it, we are not just appending it to the parents, because if we append it to the parent, it's just going to, go to the last part, which is what we don't want. So we are going to use this parent element dot insert before. So that means insert it before this first child element. So let's see what that gives us. Can you see it comes before this one? So if, for instance, I want it to come before this second child, it's very simple. I just get the ID of this second child, come to my index and get the second child. For instance, let me rename this for just the purpose of consistency, second child, and then I bring this here, and that works. Sweet, right? Do we understand?
Yes.
All right, so just in case we don't want to, it will be the last element we have. And like I said, there are a whole lot of actually 1,000,001 DOM manipulation methods. It's just when we need it, we just have to, look for it and see how it works. Read up a bit of, that's one thing we'll be doing a lot so as developers, reading documentations. So another way is by replacing the child elements. We can replace the child element. To replace a child element, we use the JavaScript method replace child. Sorry, where is this? Yeah, we use the JavaScript method replace child. And what does it do? It just takes the new node and the existing node, it replaces it basically. It simply removes child. Let me just go online and go to IMDN. Please, if you have any questions, MDM, ask. So there are a lot of web APIs, really. Let's see. If I would link it when I get the particular page. I'll just try to look for where I could see a lot of these methods. Please give me a minute. I need to plug my system. Hello. Yeah, sorry for interruption. Okay. This. Okay, let's see what we have next. So apart from changing what's the text, we can also change style in CSS. We can add, we can change the styling using DOM manipulation. So we can add, we can remove, and we can toggle. Are we still here, please?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so let's assume I have this style right here. Okay, I'm going to use my style of CSS file. So I'm going to paste this. Has a background. Let's right. I have a class of a blue violet. Two red. Red. Reduce 5 pixels. Um, cursor, pointer as a cursor. So now this is the style, right? If I see what our page is going to look like. No changes. Oh, I should affect this body. I didn't link my CSS. Okay, I need to link my CSS. It's not reflecting. Yeah. Aha. So I need to change this to a bit of grace too. So now I have my styles. Now in my HTML I create a button. And just says click me. Now, ideally what I should know Normally what I'll do is I'll just say class and I say I'll give it a class of button, right? This and I check. Of course my style is applied, but there's no fun in that. So let's assume I have this of mass. How do I use JavaScript to append that style to it? Very simple. The first thing is I have to, that's what is usually the first thing. Get the element you're trying to change or you're trying to manipulate. That's usually the first thing. I need to be able to get that particular element. Oh, do I get it? If I don't want to use get element by ID, what other way can I get it?
Query by get element, but get my query.
Query selector.
Yeah,
Okay.
query selector.
Okay. Yeah. I also use the button. Sorry. Get elements by tag name. Okay. So here we are going to use document first get elements by ID, and it has an ID of master. So now I am going to talk about event listeners in a bit, but events are just things that happen on the web page. Interactions, button click, when the web page loads, all of these are events. And in JavaScript, I can add an event listener. What is an event listener? Very simple, something that listens for events. That's simple, right? Something that listens for events. So clicking a button is an example of an event. When I click a button on my page, that's an event. And I can add an event listener for JavaScript to listen to a button click, right? So I add an event listener. Now, what is the event listener? What is it listening to? Or what type of events is it listening to? In this case, I want to listen to a click. Do you understand? Are we clear on that? So here I'm saying button element. I want to add an event listener to this. What kind of event listener do I want to add? I want button click, and then when this button clicks, run this add function. We are here to define. We are going to define it now. So I have this function and then add, excuse me, add function. Just add a class list. When you want to add a class to an object using DOM application, you add a class list. Class list. What class do I want to add? I want to add. So I'll go right again because I know it's a bit of a mouthful. What line 28 is doing is getting the particular button, because we might have a lot of buttons on our pages, but we are referring to just one. So we get a particular button. Line 29 is adding an event listener. Events are interactions that happens on a page, and we are going to get to that. Now, what kind of events do I want you to listen to? A click event. And what should happen when that click event happens? Run a function which I defined below. And what is this function doing? It's just adding a class to that particular button. When you click on the function, it adds a class to the button, right? So let's look at it. I mean, we have just a normal button, right? But when I click on it, can you see?
Yeah.
When it clicks, because JavaScript is listening for an event, it adds that class that I have defined in my
Yes.
CSS file. Are we clear on that?
Yeah.
Okay. So the same thing if I want to remove it. No, but now instead of add, I'm just going to remove. I mean, quite easy, right? Instead of doing add here, I'm just going to write, let me just behave this. I'm just going to remove this. So now if I go back to this, okay, I will need to click the first time to add, and then I'll click the second time to remove. So if I click on this, did I save that? Okay, I did. Oh, I have two add functions. I have two add functions. Okay. Okay, so I think here what will happen is first the button here. So when I click on this, it removes it. Do you understand? I hope you are clear on that. We can also toggle, and this is actually more. People tend to use this more basically. So what toggle does is it checks, does it have it? If it doesn't, it adds it. If it checks and it has it already, it removes it. Very functional if you ask me. So just going to go to my HTML file and move this. Instead of having this, I'm just going to copy this. And then instead of remove here, I write my toggle. Add, remove, add, and remove. Quite easy. Do we understand? Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's that about styling with this thing. So there's another way we can add styles actually. Let me just copy this. Let's see how that's supposed to work. Excuse me. Let me create a div with an ID. And just 30. Okay. So now, the first thing is I get it's a class, not an ID. It's going to be a class because that's a dot notation, not an hash sign. So here I'm getting the by query selector, and because it has a class of notes, I'm getting it by that. Now notes.style.background color is equals to red is yellow. So I'm adding CSS classes. So if I save this, can you see? It's yellow and the text in it is going to be red. Are we clear on that?
Yeah.
So yeah, see a bit of styling with CSS. What else do we have here? Okay, now so I I said, there are a whole lot of other stuff you can do. Really, a whole lot. And we cannot solve everything. Just the more commonly used ones. And so usually what happens, if you want to do something, you just Google it out, how do I do this? And then examine. If there is a way you can manipulate the DOM to get that it shows. Although when we advance to React, you see that React solves a lot of these problems for us. And that's why in huge projects, people tend to use all these frameworks for us to make our work a bit faster. But it's important for us to understand what's happening in the background and the basics. So the HTML DOM allows JavaScript to react to HTML events when things happen. So JavaScript can be executed when an event occurs. When I click on an HTML, so to execute code when a user clicks on an element, I have to add JavaScript code to an HTML event attribute, just like what we did. Let me go back to my code. Just like what we did here. Because I've gotten the elements, I can add an event listener. It simply listens for event, like I said. And we have different types of events, actually. We have different types of events that can happen. A form can be submitted, you can click. So let's look at examples of HTML elements. When a user clicks the mouse, when you click on certain keyboards, certain keys on your keyboard, when an image has been loaded, when the mouse moves over an element, when an input field is changed, when you submit a form, and when the user strokes a key. So all of these events, JavaScript can take note of it, and then we can now use JavaScript to execute various things at that point. So let's see. So sorry, this is a bit smaller. Trying to get a lot on the page. JavaScript interaction with HTML is handled through events that occur when the user or browser manipulates a page. So we have static HTML. Now, how does JavaScript interact when events occurs or when the browser manipulates the page? When the page loads, it's called an event. When the user clicks a button, that click too is an event. Other examples include events like pressing any key, closing a window, resizing a window. All of these are events, in as much as they are interactive, right? And it changes from point A to point B. It's basically an event. So when I go to my, just like I resize my window now, if I resize my window, this is an event. Let's Google how to detect resizing. Resizing JavaScript. So I'm just giving you an example of if there's something you want to try to achieve with what's it called? JavaScript. I really don't know what's wrong with. Okay, let me just use my Mozilla Firefox. Chrome seems to be acting how resizing in JavaScript. You can simply use the add event listener method to register an event, and then we listen to the size. So before today, I didn't know this, but when the how do I put it now? When the need arises, yes, we just need to know how to structure our words, and then get our answer. So we are still going to be using. If you look at this is similar to what we have been doing since. I get the document by idea. I have a div called results, and then I get it by its ID. Then the inner HTML, I add it up here, so you can see, right? So let's go back to our slides. Now developers can use these events to execute JavaScript coded responses, which causes buttons to close windows, messages to be displayed to users, and data to be validated. So virtually you can do a lot of magic using this. So a very common one is the Unclick Events type, which is what we just, one of the things we just used. This is the most frequently used event type, which occurs when a user clicks the left button of the mouse. It can be a button. You can put validation warning against this event type. So let me just copy this code snippet. Sorry, my network went off for a minute. Let's see what's happening here. I don't need this. Okay. This. This has to be in a script. Doesn't have it. Okay, so let me explain what's going on here. I have a tag that's a paragraph element, and then okay, let me just close this from here. From perfect. This paragraph element, right? And then let's just sit. This. I have a style that's making everything. Okay. So here's what's happening. A p tag that just gives a bit of information. Click the following button and see the result. And then I have an input. Now the type of the input is a button. Now on click is going to say hello. basically. This say hello is a function that I've defined here. If you notice, I'm using inline JavaScript. I can actually use external JavaScript as well. But when I click on this function, when I click on this button rather, it is going to run this function. And what is this function supposed to do? Anybody?
It's supposed to give an alert and print hello like on the
Yes.
tab. Yeah.
Okay. So let's try that and see if that actually works. So when I click on this, it alerts the user. So until I click on it, that's when it does that. If I don't, nothing happens. If I refresh my page, nothing happens. So this guy too is still talking. All made possible by event instance, basically. So this hello world. Okay. Um. So that is. Let me structure this page so that when we are reading, we do not find it difficult. And then in my script, I would have this. All right, I think this is better. Yes. So the unsubmit, yes. So this has to do with forms. Now, when we have forms in HTML, I mean the purpose and the goal of the form is to submit it and eventually send data to the backend. So examples of forms would be a login for a sign-up form when you are registering to a website, for instance, a login form to enable users to log into the website. So when users fill in the form, in fact, while filling in the form, there are several kind of events. Uh, you can track when a user clicks on the input field, right? You can track when the input field loses focus. That's when they are no longer typing in it. A lot of events, a whole lot of events. I encourage us to check some of these events out. So on submit is when you actually submit the form. On submit is when you actually I've finished filling the form and now I want to submit, right? So if you look at our slide, I said on submit is an event that occurs when you try to submit a form. Now, why is this important or why do we need this? This will help us to actually validate the form. And what does form validation mean? It's quite simple. If I have a form that has 4 fields, I have name, email, and my password, right? Sometimes I want data to be imputed in certain ways. Password, for instance, I might decide to build a site and say, oh, for you to register, your password has to be capital letter, it has to be a capital letter, it has to be a small letter, it has to be 8 characters long or 10 characters long. Those are form validations, ensuring these certain criteria are made before I submit the form. That's before even it's the backend at all, right? So I can do all of this validation as soon as the user clicks the submit button. So when they click on the submit button, I just run my validation. Do they meet all the requirements I've set? If yes, then I allow the form to go through. If no, I tell them, oh, this, and this is not working. So that's one use of this. So let's us see that in action. Just going to have another form here. And input, they have different types actually. I can have an input of email. JavaScript, they do a bit of validation. I say JavaScript, HTML. When you include the input type, and I'll show you then. I can have the input type of password. Password. Right. And then I can have my button. If I go to my page, you can see. Oh, let me just use the bells so that we know what is what. I would use for name. Let me say name. And let's see. I do a line break. And this is for my email. Copy this, and this is for my passport. Let's look and see. Okay, name, email, and password. All right, good. So now, if I try to, still doesn't look good. I'm sure we can make it better with you. Okay, perfect. Looks more like it. So now, because this is an email field, if I just type in my letters, right, and I try to submit, button type. Oh, I'm just going to use this. Now to use it on submit. So yeah, I'm going to define a function that says hi. Okay, very good. Let's say name, set folder. Password. If I give it an input type of password, by default, it's going to hide whatever I'm typing as a form of bit of validation. I type in here, right? Sorry. Missing. I have to. So, trying to see what the issue is. Never. Sorry. Oh, excuse me, please. Hello?
Yeah, yeah.
I forgot why this is on. Type is button. Content message not uniformly. Email and password. Okay. So I'm trying to figure out why that function is not running. So I'll click and see if that will work. I wasn't calling. It's get sensitive. No, I wasn't working. Let me try that now. Still not working. There's no function called say hi. It's just hi. For la. Submit. Okay, see, I didn't submit form in JavaScript. Maybe I'm missing. I need to grab notes. Grabbing a reference to it. I just said this. Let me see. Okay. Okay, let me see what I'm doing. Oops. So let me see. So now function here. Until I need to call the function. Type some where to define it. I'm doing exact same thing too. Until it calls the function. So the first thing is that it calls it on. Yes. Function that. I'm doing the same thing. Is it? Hi guys, sorry, I'm trying to figure out why that is not working. Okay. I'll try to figure it out and then I'll let us know. Let's just continue. We also have the. Hello, I'm still here, please.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Um, yes, we have a mouse over and mouse out. This happens when you take a mouse over the what's it called now? When you take a mouse over an element, it can be anything, it can be a button, it can be text, it can be a div, it depends on what we want to mouse over. So all of these are also types of events that can happen. In fact, this application is using it at this point in time. Please take note of this, right? Take note of this. When I move my mouse, can we see it's changing? It's giving me the coordinates of where I currently am. So that's a practical application of on mouse over. So the more I move, the more I just get all of these changes. All right, so I think sorry. Okay, so I think with that we have covered the basics of JavaScript. Do we have any questions so far? HTML, CSS, JavaScript, something we came across and didn't understand, or a contribution?
Yeah. So I have a question.
Okay, I'm listening.
So in the what's it called? In the task you gave us, the one gave us, like the front end task that
Oh,
you
okay.
should design a page.
Okay.
So I discovered that when I inspect the page and I'm trying to like change the dimensions to maybe like a mobile phone, it's not responsive to um yeah the changes in size and all that. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Is it possible you share your screen where you are?
Okay. I don't know how to do that here.
It's the third. It's just after the microphone button
Probably
where
something.
you can mute and
That's
unmute.
not. Can you see my screen?
I think it's coming up. Okay. Yes, I can see it.
So this is my page. Do you get what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Yes. Okay.
So I inspect.
Okay.
So see all these options and all that.
All right.
See, I change it to like Samsung Galaxy. It doesn't correspond to the. I don't know if it's something I did or something.
We are probably using a fixed width or some for the card. That's the
This
the div holding the entire card. So
okay.
can I see the div?
Mm, this is it. Flex container. That's what I call
Yes.
it.
Can I
So
see your CSS for flex container?
yes, I'm using a fixed rate, like a percentage of the entire I should do.
Your width is not fixed. So you are saying you should always occupy 35%
Okay.
of the how do I know? 35% of the entire screen.
That's
Well,
yes.
yeah. Why are you giving? I'm just asking. I want to know your reason. Imagine why are you giving a margin of -20 m? Are you trying to center it
Yes.
like
Yeah.
25?
Yes, I was trying to center it.
Okay, can we let's try something. Try commenting it out and let's try the same thing if we are still going to have that same issue. Control and for exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see whether we have the same issue.
Okay. So I shifted by.
Oh, it shifted it. Oh, so that's
Yeah.
not the issue. Okay. So here's what I think, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to use media queries. I
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
It's kind of low.
Okay, let me
Okay.
increase my.
I can hear you now.
Okay. So what I'm saying is the very first one we're trying to do, I think I shared my code. That's the 4 page we try to build. So
Yeah.
if you notice at the lower part, I have what we call media queries. So what happens is if you want to do your mobile first, if you want to go mobile first means the CSS you're writing first is for your mobile
Mobile.
screens.
Okay.
Exactly. And then you now target your other screen, say tablet or desktop, depending on what you want to target, right? So some of those things, some of what is happening is your CSS is affecting it on your mobile screen. So can
Yes.
you go back? Yes, go back to the screen. That's the what you designed.
Okay. I'm done. Can you see my screen now?
Yes. Inspect. Inspect. Okay. Can you click uh the arrow button?
This one.
Okay. In fact, let me take over your screen since you are using Teams. I think I should be able to take over your screen. And then let me see if I can make a request to take over your screen. How do I do that here? No. I think you should have give control to. There should be give control on your screen.
No, there's nothing like that. There's nothing like that.
No,
I
go
don't
back
think
to
so.
your screen. Go back to the screen you're sharing.
Oh,
Okay. It's been a while I use Microsoft Teams, so I really can't see. Okay, so besides this arrow, I want to put it on the mobile
this
screen.
this one.
I can't see your cursor.
This is it.
Okay, okay. Like you want to inspect an element. Yes, exactly.
I should click it on this.
Yes, just click on it. Click on it.
Yes, I have.
Okay. Click on the entire div. 100 by 514. No, I need you to put it on, let's try a mobile screen.
This.
No, a mobile screen. Okay, anything. iPhone 12 Pro. Okay. So what you can do, exactly what you can do is, we are going to need media queries, right? So
Yeah.
maybe on last screen, you gave it a width of 35.
Yes.
So that width of 35 can apply on large screens. But when you get to big screens like this, let's try it
Yeah.
now. You can give it a bigger width. Do you understand? So if you click on this and click on the entire, like, click on that inspect element and click on that, the flex container basically.
Okay.
Okay, now in this element of style, let's just try it here on your right hand side where you have element of style.
This.
No, your right hand side.
This place. Okay.
Yes, yes. Let's try a width of 70%, for instance. Click on it and give where you have this element of style. No. Scroll up.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, give it a width of 70%. Let's see. So can you see?
Yeah.
So yeah, and I know you need to adjust some things because you are now on a smaller screen, right? So maybe the text, the
The old font. Yeah.
and I think there are two background images. I can't remember now. There's one background image for desktop screen, another one for the
Yeah. For the
mobile
mobile.
screen.
Yeah.
So all of that would have an effect, right? The
Okay.
texts have to be smaller, the spacing you give, they have to be smaller as well, right? So
Yeah.
that's where media queries would come in. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, beautiful job, by the way.
Yeah. Thanks.
So what you do is on your CSS, those styles you are applying first, they would how do I put it now? They will apply
Apply
to on mobile first, and then you make changes on larger screens.
Okay.
Any other questions, please?
No. Start.
No other questions. No questions on JavaScript. We would most likely start React in our last class. I said last class. In our next class, sorry. In our next class, because we have just this month, right? So I'll, as usual, I'll share my code and the slides. I'm just going to share the slide because I already shared one, so I'll just share the updated one.
Okay.
And then pick it up from there in our next class.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Good night.
Yeah, good night.